chosen ones and fire starters, this is internet personality Vangelus, and one of the 3 prongs of the opening trident of T-Spark was Adamas Machina's debut piece, AMT-01 Rodimus. Based on the Karakuri Rodimus design released under Flame Toys, the pre-release period that preceded this piece was a mixture of allure and mystery to me. I wondered what Adamas Machina was, what this toy would remotely feel like, and how it would factor into the rising notion that is the TakaraTomy T-Spark logo. Right off the bat, we get into one of the biggest tasks facing this figure, designing an alt mode that Karakuri Rodimus could actually transform into. This is obviously derived from the co-captain of the Lost Light from IDW fame, taking classic hot rod shapes and beefing them out in an alien way. A Cybertronian speed vehicle with a colossal sweeping spoiler, a pair of triplicate exhaust pipe systems, and a teeny tiny yellow hood. This is a busy visual, to make a massive understatement, and it has many physical gaps throughout, but the lovely paintwork and pointedly key details bring it together for me. The silver engine block persists, now buried, but also encouraging me to see it as a headcanon reason for the biggest gaps found in the front half of the vehicle mode. Engine's gotta breathe, or something. There are lovely little clear plastic windows over what I assume to be a series of high-beam lights on the yellow spoiler. Best of all, for reasons you may not understand quite yet, all 4 wheels can freely spin, even the front wheels, which are soon going to split in half. Size-wise, this thing is like a Voyager? It's kinda large, probably trending closer to the Masterpiece space, but I have found contentment in just treating it as its own thing for now. Also, if you take a look at the underside, you can definitely see where robot parts went, but it gets good. Adamas Machina Rodimus includes 4 accessories, and they can all store on the alt mode. This thing now looks utterly ridiculous, but I kinda love it. I think it's the buzzsaw, it made me smile widely. I'll get into what these things do later on, but I really appreciate that they have totally toyetic generations-ass places to mount on this mode. They really didn't have to, but high-end toys make me happier every time they kind of feel like toys. Ever since the transformation process was first shared via CAD model 3D animation, I wanted to know. I had to know. And I am so happy to say that it is not a nightmare. Now, is that a low bar? Absolutely, but this line had absolutely 0 internal pedigree, and its parent company has put out both bangers and bombs. Personally, I love what's going on here. I don't believe it's an aggressively complex conversion scheme, it just presents a lot of very odd and sometimes fresh ideas, feeling like a true representation of the stated ideal that Adamas Machina is a space dedicated to up-and-coming designers. As of this recording, I do not know the identity of the person or team that worked on Rodimus specifically, but they clearly were giving it their all. Splitting front wheels where one half becomes a shoulder blade while the other is hidden within a shoulder pad made partly out of the front bumper block, preservation of the very hot Rodimus concept of multiple adjacent center mass rotations, those 2 notes alone are laudable, but the legs are simply remarkable in my opinion. Definitely the place where ambition butts up against efficacy, but I feel the pros outweigh the cons. I really hope we can find out more about the allegedly fresh-faced designers operating within Adamas Machina, because I want to see what they're working on several years from now. I also am curious to see how all of these parts hold up several years from now, because this leg transformation is wild trick after trick, and the tops of the thighs do feel at times like they're buckling under the weight of the aforementioned ambition. Be careful with those little hip skirtly belt-like bits that click-slide down the buttocks, and don't get aggressive if the thigh plates get sticky. Obviously, if you don't find yourself as enamored as I am with the legs, then nearly half the transformation will bounce off you. But dang if I don't wonder what kind of subtle motions and maneuvers may lie within the upcoming AMT Predacons and their combination sequence. Anyway, in the case of Rodimus, it all culminates in a semi-dynamic head reveal with a combination of semi-secret hinges and a telescoping cylinder to lock Rodimus's chest plate into place. This is the root of the assignment, meant to be a nigh replication of Flame Toy's Kurokarakuri Rodimus, and I am astonished at how little has been altered for the sake of transformation. It's not a perfect one-to-one replication, but it's impressive, and the Adamas Machina paint job binds the alluring body sculpt together with sheen and zazz. This guy is photogenic in his sleep. Obviously, your mileage may vary on the base sculpt, but the end delivery on this Rodimus is eye candy for me. The baseline shimmers and textures do a great deal to instill post-purchase confidence on an expensive figure like this. Speaking of expense, another element more easily visible in robot mode is the metal content. Pretty much all of the truly shiny bits are alloy parts, and nearly all of them can be found from the waist down, doing the one smart thing you do with die-cast parts on an action figure: weigh its standing base down to the table. That said, I don't entirely understand why there are apparently die-cast pieces inside the shoulders that are also chromed orange and more or less entirely hidden in most cases. The head sculpt is very well done, but also a bit neutral. I agree with those who have made the point that some face swaps would have been nice to see at this high-end price, and probably could be convinced by a heavy campaign to lean towards the notion that if there's only one face sculpt, maybe it should have had a bit of a smirk. By the way, the robot mode stands fairly tall and maintains the Voyager to Masterpiece, I guess, feel of the alt mode size-wise. Once again, I just treat this piece as a standalone first and foremost, enjoying the coincidence of him fitting in with other figures whenever it happens. You saw the accessories plastered onto the alt mode, but let's get into what they actually do. Rodimus includes two handheld firearms, asymmetrical photon lasers that use a somewhat wiggle-tight fit and a subtle palm tab to firmly enter the figure's grasp. They fit the part, but also fit into each other, as one photon laser jams into the other to create a combined photon eliminator rifle that does really feel like the main event here. It's long, throbbing with power, and even deploys a pair of tiny winglets, for reasons I cannot possibly fathom. For melee violence and tentacle domination, Rodimus includes his signature saw blade that he used that one time in that one movie, now a full-on hand swap that requires you to pop parts on and off of a mushroom peg. It doesn't feel that bad to do, but it also always feels a bit weird. The piece itself looks sufficiently cool, with the blade being a semi-translucent part that really sells its finessed cutting power. The absolutely bonkers part is that this accessory actually accounts for the fact that the blade tips would be pointing the wrong direction if you plugged it onto the other arm. You can lever it open to remove and flip the saw blade, ensuring that its edge sweep is always realistic. Absolute pedantry in the best possible way. The final accessory is a communicator. Yes, basically a small strip of painted plastic, but hey, to everybody's credit, this little thing is able to wedge itself right into Rodimus's grip. I think there's even a nigh invisible bit of extra cutout in the nook of the palm to help it stay in place, but I don't know if that's my eyes playing tricks on me. By the way, the communicator and saw arm parts were both worked on by TakaraTomy veteran Hirofumi Ichikawa, whose input on this piece also included the alt mode, additional details, and, quote, specification of the weapon attachment method when transforming Flame Toys' high-quality figure into a transforming model, end quote. All of this trivia is also a means of buffering my B-roll that demonstrates how you can store the saw arm on the backpack, and the communicator directly on the ass, maintaining a toyetic level of full accessory storage when Rodimus is wielding his firearms in either of their configurations, as well as ensuring that he will constantly butt dial people anytime, anywhere, anyplace. Oh, one last thing that almost feels like a hidden feature: Adamas Machina Rodimus has 5mm ports under his feet, and a third one directly dead center on his buttocks. One might simply say these are for display stand integrations, but you and I both know this means it's time to slap on some Iser shoes and ram a tail up his tailbone. What a strange moment it was for me to realize these ports existed, all relivable on the unboxing stream I did for this guy back in February 2025. I'm trying to think if I have anything socketed that I can... These are all pegged! I've already fully pegged my Rodimus. The base of Adamas Machina Rodimus' neck is on a hinge that can go backwards a bit from the transformation, but also forwards a bit more than is necessary. And then at the top is a ball socket connection for ball socket type of things. So it's a pretty cool double point of movement neck setup. Before I continue on, I will also say the wings can fold all the way back. This is probably more so to accommodate poses than for like active posing, although that means you can flap them to like your angle of choice, but it also means they can get out of the way of stuff as we go here. The shoulders, now there's a whole thing. Uh-oh, it's tall shoulders. Don't worry, I think it's fine. Number one, the tall shoulders, they can kind of flap in and out a little bit on their own, and they got a little thing over there so that you can simply T-pose without having to interact with the notion of the tall shoulders. But then, thanks to the wings going backwards a bit, and this butterfly joint here, you can also swing them forwards quite easily. There is also, just to get this out of the way, there's a good bicep swivel, there's a double hinged elbow. The wrists can swivel on a mushroom peg. The mushroom peg is hinged in on the cuff so that they can wiggle like this. Also, the fingers can open with a pretty decent finger sculpt that as, like, you know, a meat flap four-finger, you know, paddle. Looks alright in a couple of different positions. It doesn't look, you know, weird and unnatural to me the way that these things sometimes can. So that whole arrangement of joints means that for a, you know, especially IDW Rodimus type, I think that it's pretty much a full range of articulation, and you can put the wings back, you know, as much as you want to. I like having them flared out a little bit, but I have not really run into many issues posing the arms, and I think it's pretty cool how much they can swing forward. Just be a little bit aware about, you know, this ridge here, that corner there, etc. Speaking of the torso that the arms are attached to, you've been looking at it, well, it turns at the waist. That's not all. It also dips forward and backwards at the waist. That's not all. I forgot I left all this nonsense on his back. I gotta show you the really cool trick. So this uses one of the transformation joints, actually, extend that back down, but by doing that, you now free up the mid-torso joint to flex a whole bunch. Here we go. And this is so cool to me because, number one, you know, working in tandem with the one at the waist, you get a decent amount of curl, but this also harkens back to the linkage articulation that is one of the trademarks of the Karakuri series by the folks at Chemical Attack, you know, who work on metal build and whatnot. So it's like you're unlocking by pulling this down. You're not only unlocking a mid-torso joint, you're also unlocking kind of a linkage joint as well. I just think that's very neat, very on topic. Possibly unintentional, I'm not sure, but I would love to know if the designer of this actually did that as an intentional nod to Chemical Attack's work and the linkage articulation concept. Speaking on crotch, the two little skirtlets can point. They're also very good at, like, getting bumped inwards, which is a little bit annoying. And their little beltlets can wiggle. This is still, to me, feels like one of the more fragile parts on the figure, so I don't mess with it too much. Partly because I don't really find I have to, other than, like, nudging these out now and then. Because the hips are the figure's main ratchet joint. It's a little squeaky, but it feels fine. So I think it's okay? Anyway, it works just fine. It can kick, you know, quite high when the skirtlet moves up out of the way, and you can actually see that happening a little bit here. And that ratchet action does not continue when you go outwards. That kind of bummed me out a bit, but I do realize there's a fair amount going on in here. There's also a little hunk of die-cast in there that I believe I forgot to call out earlier. There's a thigh swivel, and the thigh swivel works despite all that stuff going on. However, it is very easy to accidentally start disengaging transformation while messing with the legs on this figure. I don't feel that that is indicative of this stuff necessarily just not holding together, but A, I kind of like it, so I want to be nice to it, and B, this toy still isn't old enough for me to know whether or not this wears down badly over time as far as, you know, things getting all weird and transformation slidey. So definitely, this is the part of the figure that feels the strangest, and this part is the bit that feels the weakest, but in either case, like, this is where I guess you might want to kid gloves things a little bit until you're very comfortable with the figure. As time goes on, the thing I'm curious about is mainly the slight wiggle and jiggle here of the various things on the sliding rods. I'm confident these are going to be okay over time, but, we'll see. Add this to the list of things someone asked me about in 2 to 5 years, where my main reply is like, I'm not sure, I can't remember where I put the figure. But this is a bit I'd like to hear more in-hand accounts on as time goes on. Like this one, as I wiggle it, I can see that I'm undoing the locking grip in there on this thigh plate, and as I wiggle it, the thigh plate is the thing that's coming out. Over here, it's not happening nearly as noticeably, or at all, in fact. Like this thigh construction feels way more solid on mine than this one, but not to the point where this one feels bad, if that makes sense. I just want to know what happens with this as time goes on. The thigh swivel does work quite well, though, despite, all the hunks everywhere. I think this is metal, too? There's a picture out there somewhere that I'm sure would just describe all this. I'm thinking with my fingers, which are like my little hearts. The knee joint is a single hinge, and it bends decently enough. The kind of interesting thing here, there's some more diecast I think I didn't talk about. Any of these shiny bits, basically. This knee pad can cover whatever position you go in with the leg to maintain a sense of smoothness. So it's not linkage articulation, it simply gives the illusion of it in still photography. But it's better than nothing. It's better than just like sticking out like that the whole time. That would have bummed me out. The feet are a joy in that they can not only use their transformation joint to just kind of point in certain directions, they can also use a transformation joint to hinge forward a bit for walking and etc. And then they got a dedicated ankle tilt to boot. None of them go, like, super extreme, but they all do enough in tandem to make me feel really good about the standing base on this thing. Actually, no, I don't know what I'm talking about. I was talking about this hinge. I forgot there's a whole other hinge back here. You can, in fact, go, like, tall mode if you want. You can get pretty wild with the forward and backward tilt on these. You're just gonna have a gap on the backward tilt, but on the forward tilt, oh, you can full-on go like that if you want to. And that standing base is actually letting him lean pretty far back, all things considered. Like, the metal content being in the lower half, for the most part, is doing its work here. Like, that's an extreme angle. I like posing this figure. I think he's very articulated for something that's still transforming, while mimicking something that is ostensibly more articulated that doesn't transform. I don't know if that point makes sense. For some reason, I was, like, concerned going in that there may be, like, a calamitous collision of different hand feels in all the worst high-end ways, and instead, at least, from my time on stream and then messing with this at my desk for a month or two afterwards, I generally feel quite confident posing and playing with Adamas Machina Rodimus, which is one of the best compliments I can give to a high-end piece. I don't feel like I have to work myself up all day to just sit down and start making him do really fun party poses with Mastermind Creations Calidus or something like that. It fits! It fits! Got tie! Because technically, right, you could be grabbing the thighs like that, right? And now you have true gut tie. This is as Obari as you can get. He even got the wheels down here, so he's like, this is their combined vehicle mode. Now make them scissor. I mean, isn't this the final scene from Tetsuo the Iron Man? Kind of. But you can't see his face. The debut of Transformers in Adamas Machina, and the debut of Adamas Machina itself, is a wild, experimental, pricey piece that aims squarely down a trench of Trinary niche, targeting Rodimus lovers, Kurokarakuri enjoyers, and those of us who get into it when action figure modal transformation treads ever so slightly deeper into the soil of art form and experimentation. On the whole, I think it is neat as heck, and I'm glad I picked it up as part of my financially misguided goal to hold pre-orders on what appeared to be the 3 prongs of T-Spark, alongside Toy Rise X Kaiser and Dia Battles X1. But, as I said, misguided financials. This piece is absolutely high-end down to its cost, rolling over the $200 mark at the minimum in most cases. It is not for the faint of wallet, and if your sensories did not perk upon first blush with its concept, I don't know that it has much outside of its in-hand feel to pull you any further from the fence. That hand feel and tactile experience have been a pleasure for me, thankfully. I have transformed this figure a lot since receiving it, and I am really into both its personal concepts and what it represents on a wider scale as far as Adamas Machina's goal of experimentation and fresh design. I am now exponentially more interested in the upcoming AMT Predaking, almost more so because it clearly is not trying to pair itself together with Rodimus in any obvious way. And I am curious if the upcoming Lost Light redeco of this piece carries any kind of tooling modifications. Though I am not currently thriving enough to throw a pre-order down on a high-end redeco just yet. Anyway, this has been Internet Personality Vangelus, and my aforementioned T-Spark Trio adventure was very much thanks to my supporters on Patreon, YouTube membership, and Ko-fi. For those curious, I did commit some level of direct comparison between this and reformatted Calidus during the unboxing stream back in February. Rub them together at your own risk, of course, if you want to replicate my own docking experiments.